Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cineblock Studios, and welcome back to another color theory tutorial. Today we're looking at hue variance in color mixing. So what exactly do I mean by hue variance in color mixing? Well, put simply, when you're mixing colors and picking colors to mix, you might think, okay, I'm going to pick a yellow and a blue and make a green. And you're working on making a green, and you just can't get the green you want out of it. You're like, are my ratios wrong? Do I need more yellow, more blue? What's going on? Why can't I get the green that I want? Well, the truth of the matter is, not all colors are created equal. As I've mentioned in this color theory series before, some colors are a little bit biased to one color or the other. For example, a yellow that has a cool bias is going to seem brighter, maybe more sunnier type of a yellow, but something like a cadmium yellow, which I use more often, has a red bias to it, and it's a much warmer yellow. So this can really change and affect the kind of color mixing that you're getting. And today we're going to mix my cadmium yellow with 5 different blues to show you just what I'm talking about. So let's get started. So for today's tutorial I have my regular glass palette off to the side, as well as just a piece of watercolor paper. This has a little bit of colored pencil mark on it, but just ignore that for this video. My yellow, as mentioned before, is regular cad yellow medium. It's a pretty good middle-of-the-road yellow, but again, it is a little bit of a warm bias, so you're going to see a little bit, sort of an orange tint to the paint itself. Now our blues for today, well, this is where things get kind of interesting. I've got phthalo blue, which I've been using for a long time. It's really, I find to be a good alternative to an ultramarine, which is much closer to a primary blue. I have Prussian blue hue. This is a base standard staple in my studio. Use it all the time. Another base sort of standard staple, Utrecht's cerulean blue chromium pure. There are other cerulean blue chromiums, particularly the one from Golden. However, the one from Utrecht actually has a little bit more of a green bias, and that's why I usually do prefer to go with the Utrecht brand for the cerulean chromium. Next up, we have a relatively new color on my palette, Golden Smalt Hue. This is a highly transparent and low tinting blue. It's going to be really interesting what kind of greens we get out of this mix. And finally, I don't have a tube of it, but I do have some spray. This is some Cobalt Blue Hue from Liquitex, so I'm just going to be able to get a good bit of spray down on my palette and use that for mixing as well. Now I should note before we really do get started that whether you're mixing a green or an orange or whatever you happen to be mixing, the closer your 3 primary colors are to a good, pure, sort of middle chromatic hue, the closer they're just going to be and easier they're going to be to mix, as well as the more dynamic range of colors you're going to get out of them. For this reason, many color theory sets will give you something like a quinacridone magenta or quinacridone red or something like that, because that color is in many ways closer to what you might see out of even like your home printer, to give you a more sort of magenta, cyan, and yellow range, to give you that more diverse mixing of colors. When you start kind of playing, particularly with a lot of my blues, towards a warmer or a cooler mix, you're going to start to see a little bit of a variance in those color mixes. And that's really, in general, what we're talking about today, is those variants in color mixes, and why a lot of people do tend to struggle and not understand that when they buy a paint color, they're not necessarily buying a pure paint color. So you have to really kind of play around and train your eye to see color in a more dynamic range. So if you noticed, I didn't grab the cobalt blue out of the spray yet. This is probably going to dry a little bit faster, so the last mix that I do is going to be down here with this blue, so I don't want to jump right into that, and then by the time I get to it, have it dry. So we're just going to spray that out a little bit later. I have my water bucket off to the side today. You don't really need to see it for this demo, and I'm just using a regular round brush here as well. So I'm going to start out with the phthalo blue. I'm going to separate out a bit of color here so I don't pollute my main section. And phthalo blue and cad yellow, to me, create sort of the nice middle of the road green, sort of that spring green, the green you're probably thinking of in your head. When you think of green on a color wheel, this is probably pretty much what you're thinking of, is a green like that. Smalt, as I mentioned earlier, is a very low tinting color, so in this case the yellow could very easily overpower this, so we're just going to add a tiny bit of this in. And smalt being both a hue paint, which is a mix of pigments to replicate a color, in this case historical smalt. It's also, for that reason it's going to mix a little bit differently. It's also a little bit grayer of a blue, and so you're going to see a little bit of a difference, not necessarily mixing into a green that you'd probably even think that you'd get. That's kind of why I like smalt. I've added it recently to my palette, and that is not only made the rest of the green transparent, but it's created a really sort of interesting muted deep green, something you may not associate with a regular blue paint. Next up we've got Prussian blue. Prussian blue I love using to create a nice sort of base green, and then maybe building a mix of the phthalo and cad yellow on top of that, or just an out of the tube green. But I find that the Prussian blue hue creates a really nice, not quite as muted as the smalt of course, but just a really good toned down version of what you might get out of the phthalo. That's actually leaning a little bit yellow. I'll add a little more blue to that. There we are. Again, that original mix with the phthalo blue, that's really dominant. That's standing out. These mixes are a little more interesting, a little more different. Finally, at least on the tube colors, we have the cerulean blue. And cerulean blue is going to be a little closer to, I would say, the phthalo mix. But again, we are leaning a little bit closer to, again, a cooler blue. Maybe it's warmer. I can't tell. I've really only ever used the Utrecht chromium blue. I'm actually I think I'll grab the other, the golden one, just to kind of really show you that difference. Yeah, it's really very yellow. I don't mix green with the cerulean very often, so it's harder to get the kind of color I'm looking for there. There it is. Right about like that. So as I mentioned before, both of these are considered cerulean blue chromium. Now what's very different about these is, I didn't even realize this when I bought them, is how different the color is, even though it's using roughly the same pigment. So you're getting really a much cooler blue out of the Utrecht brand than you get out of Golden. Golden's actually looks a little bit more transparent as well. When I actually looked at the pigments, the Golden is PB36:1, and the Utrecht is just PB36, no extra numbers there. So I think that is a slight variation in the pigment, so you're getting a little bit of a difference there. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze a little bit of this out, because I don't think I've done a good color mix with the new one yet, because I was waiting to get rid of this one first. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to switch out from the Utrecht cerulean to the golden one yet. Again, because I haven't gotten a good side-by-side comparison, but hey, since we're already doing this video, might as well do that today. You know what, I honestly can't tell the difference in terms of mixing, so I think either way it should be fine. Yeah, that's really pretty much the same color that you're going to get out of that. I'd say if you're using it straight out of the tube, you'll see that difference, but again, not a big deal. Okay, so finally we have the cobalt blue hue. Now eventually I will be getting a tube of just regular cobalt blue, not the hue variant. So one thing to note here is that the hue variant in the spray paint line is going to have a slightly different color mixing than regular cobalt blue would. But again, it's not going to be a huge difference, just something to note for future reference. Okay, so we have that little puddle of the cobalt blue, and just as before, grab some yellow. This actually is really a lot darker, so I probably have to be rather sparing with it for this mix. And that green, with a sort of the trend of a lot of these other ones, a lot more muted from what we kind of started with. That's actually still pretty yellow. I'd be hard-pressed to call that green at all. I mean, that's a really interesting, deep mix. Definitely really good for natural, more natural colors. And all of those, again, mixed with cadmium red, so it's like that's a really different range. And if you're not really educating yourself on what kind of blues you're buying, this can totally change what you're getting in your piece. And you saw, even on the palette, just with those subtle mixes, going from yellow to and adding the blue, getting green, you're not always going to see the same kind of greens with the same kind of blues. And the same goes for yellow as well. Now, I had to look around the studio to find something that wasn't cad yellow, because I've been using cad yellow across mediums for a long time. My Liquitex acrylic ink, I have some yellow medium azo. This is really, and I showed this at the beginning of the video too, this is really one of the only alternative yellows I have in the studio. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this stuff out on my palette just to kind of show you a couple of quick mixes and how that yellow can make just as much of a difference as the blue. So get yellow, phthalo blue, and that, suddenly we're just brighter, sunnier, much, much different there. The smalt's going to be crazy. I haven't done this with smalt yet. Kind of ran out of it, but not a big deal. A little more yellow biased here, but you know, you get the picture. Well, since I'm already down here, I'll grab the cobalt. Here's your cobalt blue. Okay, we're running out of yellow. Cobalt blue green. A lot of this yellow seems to be more dominant. I don't know if that's on me, just trying to do this fast or not, but yellow and cerulean. Just here. And of course, yellow impression. Now again, this is a much warmer yellow, or a much cooler yellow rather. So it's going to lean toward those brighter greens. This is much more of that primary yellow. The cad yellow medium is redder, and because red, of course being the opposite of green, is going to mute those colors down and make them a little bit more gray, a little bit more brown. And so choosing the right yellow, or the right blue, or the right two to use together, in whether you're making a green, an orange with yellow and red, or whatever you happen to be mixing, picking those right colors can really make a difference. And of course, I would be doing you as well as myself a disservice if I didn't show you yellow and black. You're like, okay, black is not a blue. A lot of times blacks are a blue biased color. So you can actually get a really great green, or even just sort of a deep sort of color by mixing yellow and black together. And this color lines right up in that sort of same shade with the rest of them. This is just some carbon black, by the way. Mars black and ivory black are going to lean a little bit bluer, but again, if you're looking for natural earth tones, mixing different yellows and different blues together, or even a black, can really kind of change the dynamic of your piece, and maybe that's the reason why you're not getting the mix that you think you're getting. So I hope this video has really shown you that picking the right colors can really make a difference in how you're mixing your colors and what kind of color mixes that you're getting to use on your paintings. Simple colors that are closer to pure primaries, such as a Hansa yellow light or medium, something like ultramarine or phthalo blue, and then a quinacridone crimson, or just sort of a primary red if that's listed in one of the tube colors. These are going to give you a more dynamic range of colors to mix, but a more biased color from one direction or the other can give you a really interesting mix depending on what you're trying to do with your painting. It may seem a little strange, but yeah, I've got 4 or 5 different blue colors on my palette and 1 yellow, and that is for a good reason. For me, getting a more natural, muted down green is more important than having a real bright, grassy cartoon green, because that's not really useful for me. This isn't to say, however, that those greens are bad or not good in any way. It really depends on what you're going for while you're painting. So whether you're mixing a orange or a purple or a green or a brown even, if you learned anything in this video, go ahead and hit the like button and get subscribed if you're not already. And this has been from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios. See you guys next time.